At the very beginning, as an ICU nurse, you always treat a patient with respiratory distress the same way, and that's what we were doing. And it's not working because the patients weren't getting better. I'm an RN and I work in the ICU at Eisenhower in Rancho Mirage. And so we've been trying to rotate nurses within the ICU just so they don't get too depressed. So what we've started doing is just rotating so the same people don't have to have the same patients all the time. It just kind of weighs on your psyche a little bit. I think there's always that chance of exposure, and you just deal with it. And it really, I don't dwell on it and I don't stress about it because I'm exposed every day. When you go into work in a hospital, you just have to know that, just like a military man has to go in knowing that I might get shot, we have to go in knowing that we could be exposed and we could get it.
We had a schedule of releases for April, and in a moment when this thing began to spread, we decided to carry on and with the planned schedule. So we released 5 albums in April, and the weird aspect of this virus, this benefit we had, was that there has not been, and probably there will be no live shows for a long time. So people who were used to buy their merchandise, albums, vinyls, CDs, T-shirts at the shows, they began to buy directly from us. So we had a very huge increase of online sales. Of course, all postal services are delayed, but we were able to ship a lot during March and April. And at the same time, I think we had a side benefit from Amazon decided not to ship unnecessary goods for this period. So I think people had to stay home and they wanted to buy music.
So my name is Nikki Elliott, and I'm at the University of Laverne. I serve as co-director for the Center for Neurodiversity Learning and Wellness in the LaFetra College of Education. I live in the Pasadena area, and I would say for me, the biggest impact of COVID was not so much of feeling pressed to immediately learn how to teach online. As I mentioned, I've been doing that for about 4 years now, using the Zoom platform to run classroom instruction, breakout groups, teaching meditation, mindfulness, energy work, as well as the academic research work for the university online. I would say the biggest impact for us was the cancellation of the live events that we had for spring. So like our annual major symposium, we didn't have enough time to convert that into an online offering, and we had speakers that we were flying out from other places. But since then, we've had to restructure our summer immersion programs, which was the Genius Project, which involves having students with learning differences, making a transition from high school into higher ed, have a residential experience while they learn techniques and supports that'll help them go powerfully into higher ed. So we're having to switch that up and move that from a residential experience in our dormitories into a virtual experience.
So on March 14th, we were in spring training in Florida, had a meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning that told us that everything was going to be canceled and we needed to go home as soon as possible because, people were still flying and so forth. And if we hung out there very long, we might have a hard time getting home. So at 3:30 that afternoon, I was on a plane heading back to Arizona. But it's definitely affected us because we're not playing. I mean, look at the major leagues. They're not playing, and if they do play, they're going to play without fans. The minor leagues, I'm not even sure the minor leagues are ever going to get started. Our next pay period is May 15th, and there's a possibility that we will have to start taking pay cuts. We still have a job, thank God, but it's kind of scary because if it goes any longer, they're going to start cutting more and more and more, and eventually, somewhere down the line, we won't be making any money.
So I'm Sarah. I'm the vocalist of the epic power doom band Smolder. We're signed to Crystal Records, and we were scheduled to do like a 2-week tour of Greece back in March, which was starting with Up the Hammers Festival in Athens and ending with Horns Up Festival in Trikala. And what happened instead was we arrived in Greece, and within 24 hours, the American travel or the Trump travel ban had been implemented, and our tour got canceled, and we nearly got trapped in Greece under martial law. The flight home, when we did finally get back to Canada, was very stressful for a lot of reasons. But the biggest one, and I think that's when we really realized that things were not okay, was getting onto the flight in the UK. And people were getting pulled off of the flight because they were demonstrating symptoms.
I'm a founding partner of an investment firm based in Manhattan, and we manage money for clients based in New York, based in the US, and around the world. So we manage family fortunes over the long run. We're investment advisors. In the investment world, we are aware that the market goes through cycles, the economy goes through cycles, and every time when you have a long period of very good markets, rising markets, good economy, strong economy with low unemployment, the history tells us that what goes up has to come down, and the corrections happen, and it's just a matter of time when the next one will come. So every time we're prepared, but every time we're surprised, because you never know what triggers it. The silver lining of this crisis, in a way, is that we know exactly what triggered the correction in terms of the economy and the investment side. It's the fact that we can't go out and spend money, and it became much harder for all of us to earn money in this period. Right? So we know that the minute we are allowed to go back, at least some sort of normalcy will come back. Probably not all of it immediately, but that's at least the silver lining. We know what caused the crisis, the lockdown, and we know that some removal of it over time will bring the economy back.
Sweden has not locked down. No one is wearing face masks or face shields or anything. The thing with Swedish people is that they trust a lot in their authorities. It's amazing. And I, as an outsider, I am a bit freaked out about this because I see everyone here is living their lives as normal, especially in Stockholm, which is the capital. There are about 1 million people living there, and it's not a super big city, but people there are living their normal lives. If we compare Sweden to our neighbors like Norway, Denmark, and Finland, Sweden has the highest rates of coronavirus cases and the highest rates of death.
So right now, I am, in addition to working 40 hours a week, I've got a essential job, and we have a nice letter to wave around if we get stopped by anybody. Hopefully, it hasn't been a problem. I've actually been working from home. All of us have, I think, for the most part, except for photographers, for 2 months now. But in addition to doing that, I'm also responsible for the education of a 7th grader and a 1st grader. So they are both working very hard, have a very good attitude about it, but it's still at least a job and a half to do that. I haven't encountered anybody
who's started anything with me, although I have coworkers who have reported that they have gotten people confronting them of how dare you wear a mask and, blah, 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 or you're contributing to paranoia and stuff like that. But I haven't had that personally, although it may be because I'm a bigger person and they probably don't want to start a fight with somebody who could fight back. No, I haven't, but I obviously online when I post a story about coronavirus, which is the majority of what we're writing about right now, no matter what the subject is, no matter how mild it might be, very quickly I get people yelling at each other about how it's all, a hoax or whatever else like that. And yelling at me because I somehow have made it worse by mentioning this is the thing that happened.
On March 12th, I started getting numerous phone calls in from clients saying that they were waiting to see if they were going to be able to have an event scheduled or not. I had probably 25 to 35 events scheduled for the end of March, April, and May, and then a huge event in June that lasted about 3 weeks. And on March 12th, I lost pretty much the majority of all my work that day. Every single event that got canceled, I lost within that day to the next week about $60,000. I daily, pretty much either every day or every other day, go over and see my mother, who is 94. And through this pandemic, she has taken a spiral of going downhill with dementia now. So yesterday was an extremely hard day because she had a small fit and for the first time ever told me to get out and to not come back and not see her anymore. And I know that's not true, but it's very hard to not take it personally. I take a walk every night. I go about 3 to 4 miles to 5 miles a night. I started taking a camera with me. I start knowing everybody's yards, from sunflowers to poppies and daisies and all that. And I take a lot of pictures of, flowers, of fences, of gates, wood, anything.
When our nerves are frayed and we are tempted to snap, help us to be kind. When we want to know how long this will go on, when this will be over. Beginning in February of this year, I have been the teaching pastor at Messiah Lutheran Church in Yorba Linda. We decided before March 15th that March 15th would be the last time we, meaning Messiah, would hold public worship physically gathering in our sanctuary for some period of time. We didn't know how long it would be, but we just watched what was happening, and before there were any stay-at-home orders that would have prevented us from physically gathering, we said, if the Christian ethic is to love and serve God and love and serve your neighbors, we're not loving and serving our neighbors by inviting them to come and sit in a room with 200 other people and all breathe on each other and get each other sick with something that might kill you. It's really central for Lutherans. We are a faith tradition that defines the church in part in terms of being people who gather for worship. And we're not physically gathering. So people really miss that community, and we've had to find ways to do that online.
I've been really happy to see the outpouring of connectedness, of people caring who has enough money to eat and who was an hourly worker versus who's a salary worker, who can work from home, who needs groceries, which elder doesn't have someone. I've heard so many stories of people. I know my family, we've adopted a couple of families who were hourly workers that were considered non-essential to help make sure those families have groceries until they can go back to work.
So we are all sometimes too caught up in ourselves. But what I have seen in this time is a tremendous outpouring of generosity from people who are doing well, who are okay, and are looking for ways to help other folks who are in need. So, for example, Messiah is supporting this food pantry, and we're filling up a truck full of food every Monday.
I don't like a lot of the things that I've seen in other people. The social media that has been happening with a lot of hate on social media. And then there's people that are doing such marvelous things that, you wonder, it's like, why couldn't everybody be like this? I donate to a lot of dog foundations, and one of them is the Little Red Dog, which is located in Lake Forest. And there's another one called Pooch Match, which they do a huge amount of work from San Bernardino of abused animals. Watching the social media of what's happening, people have been so lonely during this time that the adoption rates have skyrocketed. And there have been numerous shelters here in California that all the dogs, they've been adopted. There's a few shelters that have been empty for the first time ever in history at those shelters, which makes me so happy.
Arriving in a foreign country with, hundreds of pieces of merch is obviously not an ideal situation. And then being told, like, okay, you need to turn around and go back home as quickly as you can. So what we did was just like, okay, we're going to try to sell all of our merch online or to festival goers or whatever. I think just doing that and then kind of seeing the response was really humbling, and it made us really stressful situation a lot easier. And it also just made us realize that, like, it's easy to sometimes believe that you're like alone in a situation. And I think in that case, we never felt that way at all.
I think in terms of the church in particular, we will continue to get better at using tech. Maybe this is dragging us into the 21st century.
What I noticed is that we look at each other with suspicion. we see each other if everyone is wearing a mask, if we have gloves and everything else. So I think that this thing will change. I don't know for how long. I'm pretty scared about that.
I think everyone knows that, like, venues are struggling to stay open in terms of, like, what's happening with COVID. Booking agents, artists, sound people, merch people, there's tons of associated jobs right now that are going to be lost. I don't want to, like, project too far into the future because I know that it's very uncertain right now, like, what the actual impacts are going to be, like, long term. Just in terms of, like, wanting the music industry to survive, like, what we're going to need is for fans to put their money where their mouth is and support bands. That means buying their stuff, paying for their merch, buying it direct. That kind of stuff is what is going to make artists survive.
Because once you get used to doing things in a certain way, easier way, I think that will stay. And that includes curbside pickup or delivery, how people are switching to how they purchase things. If you see, and I'm looking at my parents, my grandparents, Zoom video communication, all the tools that were already there, but now we're using them more because of the need that was created. From digital signatures to prescription done online to Zoom calls. So I feel like because of the friction and obstacle in front of us, there's actually a lot of different creative ways of fixing things. And I'm very impressed how people are responding.
So I think it's going to be a mix. I think we're going to lose some businesses. I think we're going to lose some restaurants. I think lots of main streets will be full of chain shops instead of old mom and pops that didn't have the money and went under. I think movie theaters are probably going to be replaced by on demand. But I also think that they're going to be a little more flexible. I think the world did not end when we work from home. I think a lot of places will say that's fine, keep on doing that. I think even schools might even do that. Wouldn't be surprised if schools, even ones that are traditional schools, offered a lot more online classes, like kids do some work from home.
It looks like they're going to play. It looks like around the weekend of July 4th, they're going to open up and start playing And the only way you're going to be able to see your favorite team is by putting on turning on your television. And for some people, they may have to. It might even cost them money there because not all games are televised on local channels. Cable is set in, and you got to buy a package, a major league package, and they ought to get it for free, just so they can watch it. But you know what? The reason that they aren't wanting to start is because television puts a lot of revenue into the pockets of our owners. And that's the only way they're going to be able to survive, or none of us are going to have jobs.
Our life is going to change. The way we act. In Latin America, we are very warm. We kiss and hug all the time. In Sweden, they don't do it. They hug when they are very close, friends, family. But they don't kiss on cheek. But in Chile, we do that a lot. And we will not be able to do that anymore, probably.
See my grandkids.
I think probably the first thing I want to do is go see my grandson.
And go to a TJ Maxx. I have a thing for watches, and that's my favorite place to go to get a watch.
The first thing I want to do is I want to get to Florida. And I want to walk into that locker room, put my uniform on, and go outside and just say, yes, I'm back out on the fields, and start listening to the crack of the bat, people playing catch, and eventually somewhere down the line, somebody saying play ball.
I think in the dating landscape, it's been really interesting to see people who thought they never wanted to commit. I'm going to speak about men. I'm a heterosexual female. Men that swore they didn't want to be in a relationship and they didn't want to commit. And now that they're locked down with no option to go pick somebody up, all of a sudden have this amazing interest in relationship. Like, no, you're experiencing the consequence of never wanting to commit. That, you went 3-4 months in that house by yourself with no options.
I live next to the University of Redlands, and there's a bunch of college-age people who didn't go home. They're still here. Maybe they figure they're paying the lease all year and they might as well stay here instead of going home and hanging out with their parents. And I don't know what they're doing. University of Redlands students aren't wildly crazy party animals like my university was, but they're still doing something. So I'll see them all the time wandering around in swimsuits even though no pools are open. Up and down the street. I don't know if there's some sort of weird, coronavirus orgy going on or what. I can't figure out what on earth they're all doing in swimsuits because there's no swimming pools around open.
One thing that was pretty funny at the beginning was, I think you saw it, people being out on their balconies and singing and, building a sort of communities with neighborhoods, but that didn't last long because people began to get tired of that, and there were fights and screams and everything else. But in the beginning it was fun for the first few days.
My greatest fear is that any part of this coronavirus pandemic would be used to undermine our essential tenets of our democracy and freedom and liberty. I think that with 9/11, we gave up a tremendous amount of privacy and things. They started really regulating every financial transaction and all the video scanning. And now with this, when they're talking about like in South Korea, where they are having thermal scanners as people pass and tracers in everybody's mobile phone to trace exactly where you've been and how long you've been where in the name of contract tracing to trace the virus. Scanning people's medical records or asking to have vaccine cards to prove that you've been vaccinated against. I don't know why all of this has to jump to that level when any other time that we've had a pandemic over time, we created a vaccine and we went on with certain privacies in place. And my greatest concern is that this is being used as an excuse to further impede on personal liberties and personal privacy.
What is your greatest fear?
That this thing is not going to end anytime soon. that I cannot be able to travel to visit my family in Chile. I have bought tickets to travel there later this year, but I'm not sure if it's going to be possible.
But the biggest fear on the investment side is the fear of losing it all, and it affects the way we think about our clients' money and own money we invest. So any risks that we take on the investment side is with that mindset of what kind of investments can we choose, never risking losing it all, which really changes the thinking, because when you think about investment success, you always think about the upside, how quickly I can double or triple my money. We don't spend enough time on what would it take for that investment to go to zero, and how painful of an experience would that be, and what can we do to avoid that experience. And I think the lesson from times like this, when you see a market correction that pretty much took away 3 years of gains for the entire US equity market in 3 weeks, right? 3 years of gains in 3 weeks. It's a very sudden loss. Obviously, we had a recovery, not a full recovery, and I think will be a rocky road ahead. But that sudden loss, I think, woke up a lot of people, and they realized the investment world, their investments, their retirement accounts, their savings, it's not always, they don't always point up.
Oh, my greatest fear is that I have it, I don't know it, and I give it to one of my grandkids. That's my biggest fear. That I would see them and that I'd give it to somebody I love, not knowing I have it.
I'm one of the luckiest people, I think, that you can even imagine. 45 years is a long time to be in this game. I tell people that I never worked a day in my life, and I'm serious when I say that. And I've got a pretty nice house. I got a brand new truck. My wife drives a nice car, and all because the baseball has been very good to me.
Oh, I'm really thankful. It's fantastic. Everybody has just been overwhelmingly fantastic. We've got food all the time. We nurses, we love food. Give us food, bring us food anytime. So we've got food coming, little, gifts and goodie bags and stuff like that. So that's been fantastic. And just people have been kind.
I'm thankful that I'm in a congregation that has the resources to do this well, because I know there are some smaller congregations that just don't. We've actually had the opportunity to invite one of our sister congregations that's nearby locally, but much smaller, and simply doesn't have the resources to put anything up online.
If you look up what happened in 1918, it was horrible. We lost more people in 1918 than we did in World War I. However, the world also survived. I mean, they made a lot of the same mistakes that we seem intent on making right now. And a lot of the dumb stuff that's making everybody explode on social media happened then too. But we survived and we made it through. We will make it through. The world will be different to some degree, but we will. There is a far side of this. I
have depression, I have anxiety, I have insomnia, and they're being exacerbated very terribly right now by COVID, by the pandemic, by the response. And I think the way that I've been coping with that is just making sure to reach out to friends and family and to tell people that I love them, and asking them to do the same for me.
Now, the one thing I would like to mention is that, family, but they're also friends. And I have quite a few friends that are on their own, and they live by themselves. And I think this time, speaking of health and mental health, I think spending a minute and giving a call to a friend that you haven't heard from, I think could make a big difference.
There's never really been a time that we've been asked to endure a traumatic experience away from those hugs and those touches and coming together in church, in mosque, in temple, in spiritual community. When you see a shooting or any kind of emergency, as soon as you turn on the news, all you see is people hugging and crying into each other's shoulders and arms to repair the damage of that unavoidable tragedy. And yet that's the very thing we're being told not to do now. We're in the middle of a tragedy, a global tragedy, and we're being told not to hug and touch and connect to each other in the ways that our physiology is designed to repair itself. And so my message of hope for people who feel in despair and depression is that there is nothing wrong with you that you feel sad or down right now.
We're all in this together.
We're all in this together.
Estamos todos juntos en esto.
Siamo tutti sulla stessa barca.
We're all in this together.
Vi sitter alla i samma båt.
Oh, we are definitely all in this together.